It's only right if we throw in the double dare to top off the Nickelodeon fun that we had on Sunday, or whatever you want to call it. But hey, Mitch Trubisky is an MVP. Take that, Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, exactly.
Welcome into the Bearfront Podcast, presented by ShyCitySports.com. It's the end of the year. We had to go live. We had to go live. They gave us so much to tee off on over not even like Sunday, but the last 48 hours have just been a gold mine of honestly feeling like we're taking crazy pills here with just, God, I don't even know.
A few hours ago, they were still handing it out live on Chicago sports radio.
Oh my God. Like, I feel so damn dumb. Like, feeling like I'm going insane trying to understand what exactly it is that the Bears front office is doing, that McCaskey's are doing, that Ted Phillips is doing, that Ryan Pace is doing, that Matt Nagy is doing. We literally are getting the same exact thing that we saw a year ago. Before we get any further, again, welcome in. He's Nick Bidding. I'm Steven Johnson. Feel free to fly into the comments. This is part of the reason why we wanted to go live here tonight. If you're listening to the podcast after the fact, we are live on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. We had to. So hop in here. Let's have some fun tonight. It's just ready for a
commiserate with us.
Yes.
Collaborate and commiserate with us.
Yes.
Let's have a collaborative commiseration.
Let's all be miserable together. So that's more or less where we're at here. Where should we start? I don't even know where to start.
I guess we can touch on the game a little bit, and we'll get to the fun stuff, which was the press conferences. Where does that say is to fun? As to say it is that it's fun. I guess my first impressions of the game was that was probably the most pathetic, uninspired, just weak-willed. It didn't, for a playoff game, it seemed like the Bears didn't want to be there. As soon as Wims dropped that pass, they were done. Like, that was their shot. They've been setting that. I guarantee you, I haven't heard. I guarantee you they've been setting that shot up all week. And once they missed it, I feel like even though they were still in the game, they just gave up and it was done. I think at the beginning of the fourth quarter, Mitch was 11 for 22. No, excuse me. It wasn't even that bad. It was with 2 minutes to go in the game. Mitch was 11 of 22 with 151 yards passing. It felt like they caved on the road in a playoff game for no reason. We were in that game until the third quarter. It was pathetic.
The defense did everything that they needed to do to turn the tables and get the offense into a position where they could score and take advantage of everything. And it's mind-boggling. Yeah, great start here with Josh chiming in here, feeling like the Bears didn't want to win that game. Like, after a while there, it kind of did feel like that, where especially the defense, they're just like, screw it. We're not getting anything out of this. The offense isn't going to help us. They're going to call crappy rollout pass plays on 4th and 1 after converting 2 4th and short plays earlier with the running game, which is the strength of your offense. And you're going to run away from it again.
I feel like we just had that conversation 2 weeks ago. It just,
oh my God.
Or your quarterback on what, 4th and 3 or maybe 4th and 5, somewhere in that range. Trubisky rolls out to the near side. There's no pass open, but he runs out of bounds on 4th down rather than just cutting it up and risking taking the hit for a first down. It was pathetic. And I don't want to go away from the game if you don't want to, but I don't know how you can watch that game and then 48 hours later tell us your culture's good.
After your starting quarterback calls it out in the post-game presser.
Even more so. Like, even if he hadn't said that, I don't know how that's good culture. And then Mitch directly refers to bad culture or a culture being at issue. And so then all of a sudden your culture's good again. None of it makes sense. Like, and I feel like the Bears as an organization think we're stupid.
I mean, yes, they obviously do, given everything that was put on the table yesterday with the Four Stooges going up in front of the media for honestly a press conference that wasn't even needed. I mean, that's the worst part is it wasn't even needed. And again, you got Wims dropping the ball.
Mm-hmm.
The Anthony Miller punch, which just my God, like Gardner Johnson is going to piss you off. He's going to get in your face. He's going to say things that are going to get you amped up. Leave him alone. Don't listen to him. And Anthony Miller has it in his head that he can come out here as the Bears wide receivers are already short numbered as it was with Darnell Mooney being out. And you do that. Like, what is wrong with you? Did you not watch Javon Wims go and punch the same dude over the same reasons 2 months ago?
They covered it in practice all week. It was a bullet point in practice to not do that, and that's what I'm saying is you can't have that happen. Admit going into the game that you knew it was going to be an issue, and then have that happen, and then all of a sudden turn around and say Matt Nagy's a good coach. Our culture's good. That right there is coaching and culture. It 100% is. That's all that is. And the thing is that people will say, well, Anthony Miller's undisciplined. It's up to the coach to take him off the field then and not have him play in big spots.
I mean, it's God, like, and then just like all these like business words that they want to use afterwards, like synergy and collaboration, and just like, I don't want to hear this crap. I'm not in a cubicle.
No,
I'm here to watch the Bears win football games. That's what I want to see. And they can't do that. Like they're sitting here and talking about how they want to be competitive in the NFC North. They want to be the Packers. They want to be the Saints. They want to be these top tier teams in the NFC. We're closer to like the Lions and the Redskins and bad teams, the Jaguars, the Texans.
Maybe not the Jets. Maybe not the Jets. Maybe
if we're running this back. I mean, I don't know what's next. I labeled the Keeping It 100 with Phil and Shane their episode this way, and I wish we had it for ours. But the title of their episode this week was the definition of insanity.
Mm-hmm.
It's doing the same thing over and over and over and expecting a different result. And that's what the Bears are doing.
And this isn't a defense of the clown show we saw the last couple of days. I get that at a press conference like that, you can't pull the curtain wide open and give away trade secrets and everything you're going to do. And some of the stuff has to stay in-house. I get that. I understand that. But the problem is when they were asked straightforward questions is, how do you define accountability? Like what's being done behind closed doors for accountability? I don't need the nuts and bolts of it. I don't need the hyper details of it, because I get some of that has to stay in house. Those are private conversations. Give us something. Give us the 30,000 foot view of it. Someone asked them to define progress. I forget who it was, but they were asked to define progress both this year, what progress should look like next year in their evaluation, and they couldn't do it. Again, I'm not asking for the 800-page step-by-step progress looks like A through a million or 1 through a million, but give it something like, hey, we have some benchmarks. Here's a few of them. Here's how we're going to evaluate. Here's how we're going to view progress next year. They not only refuse to go into the weeds on it, they, I believe, flat out basically said they weren't sure and couldn't define it. That's insanely concerning. Like, I don't know how you listen to somebody who's running an organization not be able to tell you how they're going to define progress in the coming year and have any confidence that anything good's going to happen.
Well, as we all know, I mean, George McCaskey talks with other owners around the league about what the Bears should do.
The
Uh,
Bidwells of all people.
like I just saw that, and like, oh, I couldn't help. And if you missed this on our social media pages, I couldn't help but make this after the press conference yesterday, because literally this is immediately what came to my mind. I don't know about you, but it's like, are you talking to the Packers? Who are you talking to outside of your own organization about, making choices on what you put on the field? Like, it's just dumb. Like, I don't understand how you can put faith in other franchises whose job it is to beat you instead of the guys that you hired. And on top of all this, we're going to transition here into this circus. I don't even know what you want to call it. There's several words that we can look up in the dictionary.
I want to touch on the McCaskey thing real quick, because you and I mentioned this when we had Adam Johns on a few weeks ago, and I asked him this somewhat directly, getting into a larger conversation of the Pittsburgh Steelers, and I'm bringing up the Steelers because we brought it up with Johns, and McCaskey specifically mentioned the Rooneys in his presser. If you're talking to those people and you're getting advice from those people about how to form an organization, and you're one of the charter franchises, and you're leaning on those family run organizations to model your team after, which is fine, which is something I would advocate doing, especially in the Steelers case. Why doesn't your structure look like the Steelers then? If you're leaning on them for advice and you want to model after them, your front office and your actual football organization, I'm not talking about players on the field. That's a talent issue that we can cover later, but I'm actually talking about the nuts and bolts of your player pro personnel. You have a vice president of football ops, you have a GM. The Bears don't have that. The Steelers do. If McCaskey's so inclined to follow the lead of an organization like that, which I think he should, why do the Bears then not look like that? And that's a question I would have liked the media to ask, but that's tough because you have to look up who do the Steelers have in the front office. But okay, George, you're calling the Rooneys and asking them for advice. Why aren't we modeling what the Steelers are doing? If you think it's successful and you're using them for advice, why aren't we modeling it? And that's a question that hasn't been asked and obviously then hasn't been answered.
Right. And like that's the whole thing, because we're sitting here and we're listening to this again, just a rendezvous of the same thing we heard last year about how 8-8 isn't acceptable. Mm-hmm. You had George sitting here calling it an 8-9 season, which, I mean, it was. And now it's oh, well, Ted isn't involved in any of this. Then why is he on the stage? Why is he
there?
Exactly. If he has nothing to do with football, he shouldn't be on the stage talking about football.
This is a football press conference. Why is he here?
Right. And then to sit there and say that and then pass the bill over to Ted to start talking, he's involved. Like, what more do you need to say as an organization? I mean, I just, like, I listen to that and I watch it and you're just like, my God, like, how dumb do the Bears think we are? It makes no sense. And in that sense of the word, in the way that they described it, then Ryan Pace is your president. More or less. He's your head football honcho. But then they want to sit there and say, well, who's in charge of making the decisions about who's going to be the GM and who's going to do all this stuff? The president and CEO. Well, guess what? That's Ted. There's no one else. Ted's involved.
There needs to be somebody ultimately responsible for the football side of things. And McCaskey was on today with Parkins on WSCR. And Parkins, to his credit, asked this question directly, is why isn't there you had Ernie Corsi come in and help hire Ryan Pace. why don't we have a full-time position like that? President of football operations or whatever you want to call it. And McCaskey kind of punted the question, saying, well, at the end of the day, then that person's just ultimately answering to Ted and I. And so you're just you're adding another layer. You're not doing anything. But the problem is Pace really isn't accountable to a football person then. And he is responsible for somebody who doesn't know football. And I see George's point a bit, but the issue is you need a football person hiring the people below him. You can't have Pace hiring just scouts and call that it. You need someone overseeing Pace. You need a football czar who sees the entire lay of the land, who can go up the chain of command to the board, to the president, to the CFO, however we want to label it, and say, here's the lay of the entire football organization. Here's what it all means. Because a lot of those questions yesterday, if you had, I'll just say Ernie Accorsi. I'm not a gigantic fan of his, but we're just going to use him because the Bears have used him for consulting before. If you had Ernie Accorsi,
that got us.
Well, they didn't listen to Ernie Accorsi. He wanted Chris Ballard, and they went with Pace. So if he was in charge, we wouldn't have Pace. But point taken. But for the sake of the argument, we have Accorsi as our president of football ops. A lot of those questions yesterday that made George and Ted look like flipping idiots, like, how do you define progress next year? There was a question asked, how do you know Matt and Ryan are the guy based on the results thus far, the diminishing return on the results? Their answer was, that's a good question. I'm not sure. Those are questions that the football ops guy can sit down and say, Ryan and Matt and I talked. I'm not going to give you everything, but here's some things we discussed. We're going to change the way we scout. We're going to reconfigure some things in the pro personnel scouting. We understand we have limited draft capital to a certain extent at the top of the draft, so we're really going to invest more in regional scouting. There's questions that could have been asked that could have been answered by a football czar type that would have made the press conference not look so flippant incompetent. And there was one more. Why George or Ted, one of the two, asked why do they have confidence that this is the right decision? He doesn't answer it and just says he understands it's going to be unpopular. Okay, that's a question that a football ops guy can answer. Here's why. Here's the changes we're making. Here's what I'm seeing from I can give you guys a 30,000 foot view of our football organization, and here's what we're seeing. And he can lay it out. And
right. That's
why that position's so important, is you need someone over Pace who's not in the day-to-day that's overseeing everything. And Olin Kreutz talked about it on 670. It's been talked about. And I hate it because, again, it goes back. The Steelers are built like that. So I don't understand how George can say he leans on other teams and then doesn't build like other teams.
Well, and instead, we're sitting here in year 7 under Ryan Pace, no closer to a Super Bowl.
Further away.
Right. I don't get who gets 7 years to do this. I mean, really, you've had one season over 500. Over. Like, what more needs to be said? Meanwhile, you have the Eagles ousting Doug Peterson, and yeah, he made really dumb moves. Let's not lose sight of the fact that he should have never benched Jalen Hurts in that final game, pissed off the entire team. But he has a Super Bowl. Like, they just fired a Super Bowl winning coach. And again, yeah, their season wasn't great either. But the only reason we're sitting here probably talking about this whole thing is because the Bears' schedule worked out so well in their favor to save them from the hellhole that was that 6-game losing streak by stacking 3 of the worst teams in the NFL back to back to back.
And then they turned that into a positive. Well, I'm really proud of the way the guys came together. It took them 6 straight losses to come together as a football team. Why didn't they turn it around after 2 or 3 losses? Why did it take so long? I really like the way they came together afterwards. Really? The 3 teams you beat after that streak were some of the worst teams in the NFL. And then the 3 times you played an actual quality team in that last stretch, you didn't look competitive. The team didn't come together. You had people actively down to your starting quarterback questioning the culture of the football team. That's not a team coming together. That's not a well-coached football team. I'm over this narrative of, especially even Doug Peterson aside, I'm over this narrative that Nagy's a good coach. He's not a good coach. He's a terrible football coach. I don't care. I'm over it and he's done. I don't want to hear about the coach of the year. Dick Duran won an NFL coach of the year and was fired 2 years later. Wayne Fontes won multiple NFL coach of the year awards. Wayne Fontes. Like that award has a shelf life, and Matt Nagy's shelf life with that award is long expired. And then the one sacrificial lamb we get this year is Pagano retiring and I like how everyone scapegoats him. He was the defensive coordinator of a top 10 NFL unit. I get that the defense has underperformed maybe fans' expectations, but if you think for a second that the defense was the major problem on this year's team, God help you, because that's just not the case.
And I mean, to an extent, I think there is, if there is any silver lining to this regarding the defense, it's that, at least in my hopes, that they hire somebody who's willing to be a little bit more aggressive in their play calling and doesn't kind of dial it back like Chuck Pagano was doing, and really was trying to rely on the talent of getting pressure without having to necessarily force it out of the linebackers, or sending, the nickel corner on a blitz, whatever it may be, because that obviously wasn't working either. So I mean, I do have a little bit of hope there. And I saw a comment here. It got lost in our feed on our end, asking how are they further away from the playoffs when they made the playoffs 2 out of the last 3 years. They made the playoffs this year because of a bad setup, a 7th seed.
Yeah, I don't. That's another excuse I don't buy, is that you're putting up the playoffs as a positive. In any other season, we're not in the playoffs. Like, this doesn't exist, and that doesn't. So I don't understand how you can watch the last few losses we've had where we're not competitive against the teams we need to be competitive against to make that leap and take that next step, and chalk this up as some sort of positive. I mean, granted, it's not as weird as spinning the 6-game losing streak as a positive, but I don't. That doesn't wash to me. That's the Bears are a charter NFL franchise. The Bears should be competing every single year in the NFC. Like our founder's name is on the trophy that they give to the conference champion. They should be competing in this conference every freaking year, not, well, we made the playoffs as a wild card the first time it's ever happened, and we kind of backed our way in. No, that's not acceptable.
Right. I mean, it just, I don't know. Like, like they got in, but in the grand scheme of things,
Who cares?
Well, not only that, but people want to say, oh, they scored they scored 9 points. Like, 9 points is nothing to brag about. In reality, they scored 3. They scored a touchdown when it didn't count, which they've had a history of doing this entire season. They did it against the Colts earlier in the year when they got their asses handed to them, and they've done it time and time again with the Packers. They did it in 2 games against Green Bay this year. They've really not been close against any solid competition outside of getting the victory against the Buccaneers, and that's the facts.
How little progress has been made with this organization. That press conference, they were still referencing their 2018-12 win campaign and the playoffs and the home playoff game against the Eagles and how close they were. Yep, it's 2 full seasons later, and the same issues we've covered this a lot, and it drives me crazy, is the same issues you had that entire back half of that 2018 season when that offense was quietly starting to sputter and stall out. You've now had for 2.5 seasons. You have the same problems. The one thing you don't have anymore to cover it up is a Fangio-led defense turning the ball over to you at a rate that's just not sustainable. You can't do that. It's not replicable in today's NFL to assume that 1 year, 36, 40 interceptions, something crazy, some crazy amount of interceptions. You can't assume that.
Right.
And I get people wanted Pagano to be more aggressive, and I get what you're saying, but at the same time, I'd argue with the moves Pace made and the way the defense was built to not be aggressive. Is you built this what should have been a really good defensive line with two really good edge pass rushers, and this team was built to get pressure with four, not to send extra. And I understand maybe you have to change that strategy partway through the year, but you're also playing with the cards you're dealt during the preseason. Is who are you blitzing? You're blitzing Roquan and leaving Trevathan in coverage and screen the season. Yeah, and so I mean, at that point, this team was built to get pressure with four, and I'm not trying to be a Pagano defender. I just feel like if everyone's focused on him as the problem, it's
defensive coordinator was the only position left to be the scapegoat.
Yeah, because you can't find Oh my God! This brings me to the offensive coordinator deal. Is I think Nagy had a comment where someone asked him if he was going to still have Laser be the play caller next year, and they talked about how after the 6-game losing streak, everything went so well, and the culture was right and everything was working well. And then Nagy says, "Well, him and Bill are going to talk about it. They might collaborate more on it." Time out. I thought you just told me all the changes you made were working. So if we're agreeing that change is working, why are you now changing it? That should be something you keep for next year, not change, because you just told me it worked.
Does anything make sense in what they do?
No, at all.
Exactly.
They think we're dumb. I'm listening to this.
I hear you.
And the people that asked questions, I felt did a really good job. There were some follow-ups that I almost don't blame them for not asking, because some of the answers were so stupid you couldn't assume that you were going to get that much of an asinine answer and then have a follow-up ready for it. But it was flabbergasting to me to see just the lack of answers coming out of Hallis Hall.
Yeah, it's and again, the fact that George McCaskey felt the need to go on a damage control PR tour today across Chicago radio, both with 670 and 1000, that accomplished nothing. Like, if anything, it dug him a deeper hole to sit here and try and correct the things that were said. And instead, he doubled down on the culture and the people and everything. Honestly, I don't care about the fact that you have good culture guys or nice guys or guys that you're friends with. It's like hiring Coach Klein, the water boy, and he's got his green little notebook with his stupid plays that don't work. And honestly, it's dumb. It's so dumb to hear somebody try and put an intelligent thought together to try and make someone believe that that's anywhere near true. Like, it just, oh my God. Like, it aggravates me more just hearing him, defend Ted Phillips and defend what Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy have done, even though they sit here and they say, well, we didn't win enough games. That's what matters. You didn't win enough games. That's the whole point of the NFL. Win a damn game.
The Bears have won less playoff games the last decade than the Cardinals have. We haven't won a playoff game since 2010. And then Pace has the audacity. Pace, who doesn't talk during the year, doesn't talk at all during the year, has the audacity on that call yesterday. Someone asked him a very good direct question about what are you going to – basically, it was something to the effect of what are you going to change about your process? How are you going to change your scouting process or something to that effect? Especially, I think it was directly related to the quarterbacks, but it was a good overall general question. And Pace kind of gave this kind of paragraph answer that didn't lead anywhere and gave us no information. And he just kind of sat there at the end and said, well, I could go on about this all day. Continue. Like, okay, this is your chance. Like, you haven't said nary a word for 5 months. Like, this is your opportunity when someone asks you a question like, hey, what are we going to change? Again, you don't need to give me trade secrets. Give us a 30,000 foot. Like, don't say, well, I could go on about this all day. Like, we're not going to understand you because you're so much smarter than us when you're telling us about it. Tell us about it. Tell you what, make us feel stupid because you're so much smarter than us. Don't make us feel like we're stupid because you're not giving us anything.
You can get better info out of Lassie trying to get Timmy out of the well than
Yes.
Ryan Pace about figuring out what's wrong with the Bears.
That was
or trying to explain anything. Like
the lack of self-awareness of that answer. Well, I could go to about this all day. That's why we're here. Go on about it.
Man, and I'm gonna bring this up here too. We have the future matchups here for the Bears. Again, it's a situation in which I don't feel all that comfortable about. But again, the home opponents, you have the Cardinals, the Niners, the Ravens, the Bengals, the Packers, the Vikings, and the Lions, obviously, and then the NFC East, same place finisher, which I believe would be the Giants. And then the away games against the Browns, Rams, Steelers, Seahawks, NFC South, same place finisher, which would be the Buccaneers, and then the Packers, Vikings, Lions. I don't like any of those away games outside of the Lions and the Vikings.
I know McCaskey likes some of these games because he can hang out the Bidwells at a home game. He can go hang out the Rooneys in Pittsburgh for an away game. He could hang out with the Ravens the Ravens family owners when they go out when Baltimore comes to town. So I mean that's a good schedule for McCaskey. He's got a lot of his buddies coming in and seeing him. It's gonna be really nice for him. He doesn't even need to call me. He can ask him at dinner.
I mean, you look at that schedule, and my immediate thought, and comment here from Brian saying they'll play the Raiders if the 17th game is added next season as well. I mean, this is a top 5 draft pick schedule for the Bears. The way that this team is set up, I went down a rabbit hole shortly after the press conference yesterday about the salary cap and draft picks and everything else. I went on a rant of a thread on Twitter about the whole thing. And you just look at it. And again, it varies where the salary cap is because the salary cap's going down. That much we do know. Mm-hmm. The basement number is 175. It could be as high as 195. Thanks to Nickelodeon money of all damn things out there.
MVP baby.
The hope for the Bears is that the cap needs to be higher than 190, because if it's not, this is going to be a disaster trying to rebuild this team. The Bears, again, the draft pick situation, not ideal. Mm-mm. Again, which, I mean, what year is it not? And you have so many holes that you have to worry about, like your tackles. You're gonna run back Massey and Leno, bring back Jermaine Ifedi? No. What is that gonna do?
And the dirty secret is, I'm not sure the interior offensive line is figured out. Because as soon as this, we thought it was figured out, and then we started playing real defenses, and it looked really not figured out.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing is you're probably going to have Whitehair, Daniels, Bars. I mean is that your right guard? I don't know.
Like, it's probably like the betting favorite.
Do you shift Daniels to right guard and keep Mustafa at center? I mean, he performed pretty admirably for being a guy that was literally just thrown into things. But the fact of the matter is the Bears need 2 tackles. They need another wide receiver. Allen Robinson is probably not coming back unless the Bears can maneuver this cap situation and tag him, which is going to piss him off.
I was going to say, even if he's back, he's very disgruntled. He's not a happy Allen Robinson.
And I mean, he's tweeting yesterday, if you know, you know. I mean, that's a telltale sign that he probably doesn't want anything to do with the Bears organization moving forward. He knows.
I don't.
Who does? Like, who does? I mean, so you have that situation. The corner room needs some help. You need to sign another starting safety because Gibson's done. He was a 1-year deal.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's all these little pieces. I mean, are you going to run Nick Foles out at quarterback again? Because that's the current situation. You're going to draft a guy? And we'll get into this in a second because I'm curious to see what everybody watching this also thinks. So I want you guys to comment on this when we do get to it. We'll talk Watson here in a little bit because obviously that's the elephant in the room in regards to that quarterback situation. But there's this large sum of player decisions that need to be made, whether it's cuts, whether it's restructures, and whether it's just filling out the roster with players that aren't on futures contracts with not a lot of money to maneuver and get it done. And I'm scared to death that in order to make anything happen, Ryan Pace is not going to value draft picks the way that you anticipate them to, like any other franchise. And he's going to start trading things again and shorthand himself.
We have a Bears fan in the comments section that's been a Bears fan for 75 years. And I just want to tip my cap to Alan, because I'm sorry, sir, this franchise might kill you. Like this might be your downfall. And I say that as a Notre Dame fan for only 36 years. You and I are in similar situations. But the dirty secret about our defensive backfield, Steven, is I like Jalen Johnson. He performed really well this year. He did. He had a bad shoulder coming out of college. Mm-hmm. It flared up on him in the preseason. Mm-hmm. And then it flared up on him again this year. So it's a good pick, but the fear you had with him coming out
happened
twice in one season. Yeah. And how long is that going to keep happening for? Is it just a thing where he gets a full normal offseason under his belt? He has surgery. He's fine. COVID year, weird. I get it. But Pace reached for a defensive back with a known injury history, and it happened twice this year.
I mean, I wouldn't say reach. I mean, he was going to fall in that range, and there was talk that he was going to be a first-round pick if he didn't have the issues. But then you could also make that same argument for Eddie Jackson and him falling because of his knee. Yeah. So, I mean, it's
and one work. But the thing is, Eddie was a fourth round, right? Correct. He was a fourth rounder.
Yeah.
When I say reached, I meant there were safer defensive back picks in that situation that you didn't have the injury concern of. And
Antoine Winfield Jr.
You rolled the dice. And guess what? The injury history popped up. But those are things, again, that you get answered yesterday. Hey, Ryan, Jalen Johnson had the shoulder injury in college. Now it's flared up twice. Is this something you kind of tweaked? Is this part of your process tweaking as you go forward, is maybe pay attention to more of these types of injuries at certain positions? But we get none of that. I could go on about this all day, and then he stops answering the question.
Right. Yeah. It just, I don't know. It's one of those things where you just want to wring his neck. Mm-hmm. Like, is that bad to say? Like, you just want to be like, just talk, stop being dumb, stop pussyfooting around, and just answer the question. Like, even when he was asked about Mitch and the pick for Mitch and that whole decision, and he walks around that, and he knows why it was asked, but he couldn't answer it. And it's like, you need to face the music. It's bad enough we see you hiding more behind a door than we do you see you in front of a microphone because you're afraid to talk to people and own up to your mistakes, which the pile continues to mount. And meanwhile, you've got the owner of the team sitting up here talking about how well you did with drafting Darnell Mooney and not much past it.
How's it been a half an hour? We haven't even got to the point yet of the absurdity of when directly asked about how they believe this team's being built to win a Super Bowl. The one player they mentioned is Darnell Mooney.
Oh, gosh, I'm excited about him. I'm excited about him, but not that excited. Like, not to the point where I can put a flow chart together about why I'm happy about what the Bears have done this year. Darnell Mooney. Just nice and big circle. Taking up 2/3 of the thing because there's nothing else to talk about aside from the fact that you snuck into the playoffs as a 7 seed.
Two comments I want to address is Jimmy Chris about the problem is not that they didn't fire Pace and Nagy yesterday, but that if they did fire him, Ted Ted and George would be the ones to hire the next Payson Aggie. Completely fair. I get that, but that's why I guess in a perfect world is you want to build your organization like the Steelers are. And Mo, you are right. Eddie did break his leg, I believe, his last year of college, but his sophomore season he tore his ACL. So he had 2 leg injuries in college, which is why he fell in the draft.
Yeah, it's just again like there's only so long that the Bears can continue to sit here and get bailed out by these late round picks. When I mean, you think about
it, it's very Jerry Angelo, honestly.
It is, and you know the only, and again they haven't had many, obviously because of the Mac trade, but first round picks. You got Kevin White. Let's remember that one, folks.
Stephen, I will say, that was so long ago. I forget Pace was even the GM of that pick.
That was his first round pick.
I always
1 year West Virginia wonder, Kevin White. Yeah, he had injuries. He's still a 1 year wonder and didn't prove jack squat in this league. Plain and simple. Yep. Then he makes the trade for Trubisky. He trades up to get Leonard Floyd. He magically gets Roquan Smith falling into his lap, which was the safest pick anybody could have made in that draft to fill an obvious need at linebacker. So thank God he didn't screw that up. But since then, like, what more could he do? Like, I mean, there's just so much aggravation, and you can even, start diving into the second round, trading up for Anthony Miller, mortgaging a future second round pick. Like, there's all these small little trades, and just trading draft picks and trading more draft picks and trading more draft picks, and it's like it's just, it kills me that somebody can't value draft capital as a way to rebuild your roster when your cap situation sucks.
And that's, my friends, what we call a segue to, I believe, is this where we now talk about the draft capital he'd have to give up to go get Deshaun Watson?
Let's do it.
Yeah,
let's do it.
I'm gonna couch this entire conversation. There was like a 0.00001% chance of this happening, but we're gonna do it because it's fun and it's a distraction from the sadness that is our life. So come on this journey with us.
Woo! Buckle up, boys and girls. So I guess the comment here, we got a lot of you still watching here. What you believe the Bears should offer the Houston Texans for Deshaun Watson. We'll post a few of them as we go along here, but like you said, it's a long shot from happening. There are many other teams out there, many more quarterback needy teams out there that have a lot nicer capital sitting out there to offer the Texans and get the Texans into a full rebuild, which they obviously are going to do in some shape or form. JJ Watt's probably gone. Getting all these Watt brothers screwed up. TJ's pretty good though. And really, I mean, there's nothing else there outside of Brandon Cooks. I mean, the corpse of David Johnson. I mean, really. I mean, Will Fuller, who's I believe a free agent. Like,
I go a few different directions on this. We were talking with the Keeping It 100 guys prior to this going on earlier tonight, and I'm more with John Epic, where it's to me it's either a package of picks like that, like 2 or 3 firsts and a couple of seconds, or 2 firsts and 3 seconds, somewhere in there, or the interesting one that I saw in our kind of text string that gave me some pause because it's more tangible because you're talking about actual people at this point. Was it a first or 2 firsts and Roquan and Jalen Johnson, and then like maybe some like picks? There was some talk of Johnson and Roquan in that deal. That's the interesting one to me because I know we all love Roquan and I know Johnson's got some potential, but if Roquan's in that Foles Miller 2 first 2 second, also invent time travel, yes. But
oh god,
That's the interesting one to me is if you end up having to give up premium actual known assets, because the first round picks, if you're telling me I'm getting Deshaun Watson back for my next for basically 2 firsts, because here's the thing is I would consider, and this can be right or wrong thinking, Stephen. Let's go down the 3 first round picks route. If you're telling me that I'm essentially giving up my next 2 first round picks for Deshaun Watson because I'm essentially using my first round pick this year on him, I do that. Like that, I would do that deal for 3 first rounders. And I would also trade Nagy. I would include Nagy in the deal.
If Bill O'Brien was still in Houston, it might be.
It might go through. If we threw in Cairo Santos, we got ourselves a deal. But no, like honestly, if it was 3 firsts, I would do it.
And like here's the thing: is if the Bears truly do believe that they are a quarterback away again, which we all know is not the case. I mean, there's so many more things that tie into it as well. Is okay, like the 3 first rounders, yeah, because this year you're at 20.
Mm-hmm.
If you make this trade, you're anticipating being in that bottom third of the first round for the next several years. I mean, plain and simple, like that's what the situation is. And do you do that for a guy that is playing lights out? He plays at a very high level. He is a mobile quarterback. He has the acumen. Ryan Pace is probably never going to do it because he couldn't even sit down with him during the draft process, which to this day still infuriates me.
Oh yeah, I've gotten on that soapbox randomly, and I won't right here, but it's right. But it is one of those things where, and I'm gonna mispronounce the name, Ciro Morales. In the comments, there's 2 3 first rounders would be helpful for Pace because he can't screw those picks up. Like I said, it's about Angelo. That's exactly the thing we said about Angelo when he made the Cutler trade. So it's time repeating itself. Time is a flat circle, everyone. No, you're 100% right. It's to your point. If you make that deal, you're assuming you're in the latter third of the first round. Then all of a sudden, maybe that has a waterfall effect. Maybe A-Rob decides to stay. Maybe you become a more attractive destination to other free agents.
Like that's the other thing is the money. Like it's just not there. Like I don't know. Like you would honestly have to get rid of one of these larger contracts that's on your books in order to make this happen.
There's always a dumb team out there willing to take on a deal, though. Like that's the thing.
There is, but I mean, at the same time, like I mean, let's not misconstrue this. I mean, there are moves the Bears can make to make 10, 20, 30 million in cap space if they really wanted to. It could tear down a lot, but there are ways to do it.
And again, this won't happen. The creative way to do it would probably be to send Foles back in the deal since he's an expiring contract the next year. So you're basically flipping that money. Houston gets basically a life raft quarterback for the 2021 season. And they can do whatever they want with it. Foles comes off their books next year, so it's whatever. They don't care because they're making this trade to rebuild, and Foles is gone. And then the Bears have freed up that money to pay A-Rob, Watson, and then you deal with the cap issues down the road later. But you've at least got out from under the Foles money, and it frees some money up for you. That would be a way I could see it possibly working. Now you might have to throw in another second rounder or 2 to kind of allow them to swallow the Foles pill, but it at least makes sense for both teams because Foles gives them a guy they can just plug and play and start and tank the 2021 season with.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's difficult for a lot of these contracts. I saw articles this week talking about a Mac centered deal, which people need to realize his cap hit. He ain't going nowhere. The dead cap hit, not happening. Saw the same thing with Eddie Jackson. His dead cap hit is like 18 million in 2021. He ain't going nowhere. Like there's all these players where, yeah, the idea of it sounds nice, but the math of it just doesn't work. And I mean that's the thing is, I personally I'm at a loss in terms of where Ryan Pace's head is at, where Matt Nagy's head is at in terms of how to look to a competitive 2021 season. I honestly don't know. Like, is it drafting a guy like Mac Jones in the first round? Like, I mean, that's what you have to look at. Is it trading a future first to move up into the top 10 to draft one of the top guys out there? If Justin Fields drops,
There's
you
a
know,
punky QB from BYU available.
But between that and the fact that if the Bears do hold on to their 2022 first round pick and Sam Howell's there out of UNC, and we just get to hear about all the Mitch and Sam comparisons about UNC quarterbacks,
Zach's
I'm
going to
just
be intolerable for a year and a half. I
I,
love
I
the
like
fact, but it would be intolerable.
I mean, it's just one of those things where it's like, man, I don't even know what to expect
And
right
someone made
now.
a comment asking if we thought Watson, A-Rob, and this O-line, you think we're much better? Are we much better next year? I don't know. We're an 8-win team this year. If we roll everyone back out, is Watson worth? How many wins do you think Watson is worth on this team if we keep A-Rob around and the offensive line stays somewhat decent? Like, is he worth 2 wins? Are we 10-6? Is that
I'd
fair?
say 2 wins, yeah.
Okay, so if we're 2 wins better next year, are we getting to a Super Bowl with that? No, but we're improving, and we have the most important position in professional sports solved. The question is answered for the next decade, and it's not the Cutler thing where it was a dice roll. Watson's proven, it's answered. And then, like I said, you're an attractive destination to wide receivers that want to come in. You hopefully have your tight end of the future. You figure out the offensive line. I don't have that answer. And then you're pairing that with, I understand the defense didn't perform up to our expectations, like I said, but then you're at least pairing that with a top 10 unit. Again, this isn't going to happen, but I would roll those dice. Those are dice I would roll.
Yeah, it feels good to have the sure thing. Like,
Yeah.
that's just it. And again, this is kind of the conundrum here, because based on everything that we heard, and even though you have all of this talk from George saying, the 8 wins isn't enough, we aren't seeing the progress on the field that we need to see. However, what happens next year if they do draft a rookie quarterback in round 1 and this team goes 5-11, 4-12? Is Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy here to see this through? Probably not.
Well, they might have 10-year contracts, Stephen. We don't know. We don't know their contract situation because they wouldn't tell us. That's part of that. Was it McCaskey or who said it? Was it McCaskey or Pace said, well, it's like player contracts. We just don't discuss it. I can go on the internet in 5 seconds and find out who is signed for how long.
Even for how much.
Yeah, exactly. And even leaving the how much out of it to not get into the dirty side of talking finances, I can tell you how long everyone is signed for. Why can you not? So it's not like player contracts, because I can tell you right now who is signed for how long.
I mean, it's funny that it's just shrouded in mystery about just everything. Like, they feel like information is not available to the masses like it has been for the past 30 years since the internet was created. Like it just grows every year. And with social media the way it is, it takes seconds for something to get out, for something to spread. And I mean, it's just mind-blowing that they continue to sit here in this 1985 world of thinking everything's the same as it was back then when times were good. That people will be content with saying the same things year after year.
You can get away with that. You can get away with that when you're winning 12 to 15 games a season and you're winning division crowns year over year over year. I forget what the number is off the top of my head, so I'll probably screw it up. But I think between 1984 and 1992, which was Ditka's last year, I think the Bears won six division crowns. They went to a Super Bowl. They went to a couple, 3 NFC championship games, I believe. I mean, yeah, you can kind of poo-poo the fans and throw some platitudes their way because everyone's happy. Like, here's the thing: is even if you told me that you gave us a stretch like the Bears had in the mid '80s without a Super Bowl, sign me up tomorrow. But you can't have the press conference you had yesterday. Treat the fans like idiots, like you did yesterday, when you've won one playoff game in the last 10 years. And your last playoff appearance was a complete dud at home, and you lost on a double doink. And this team, for the most part of the last decade, hasn't looked competitive.
But
You get a laughing stock. Think about this. We've gone in the last 10 years as an organization. We've seen head coaches like Mark Trestman, John Fox, and now Matt Nagy patrolling the sidelines here. It's a disaster, and it's a joke. And this franchise deserves better. It does. We're a charter franchise, and I hate keeping bringing that up. Like, I have my nose stuck in there. The Bears should be a good franchise. The NFL, to me, the NFL is better when the Bears are good. Now, that doesn't mean that the Bears need to be winning Super Bowls, but when the Bears are good, it's better for the NFL. It just is. They're a national franchise. They're a charter franchise.
Money
they have a
market.
national fan base. Yeah, it's better for the NFL when the Bears are good, and the Bears should be better. We should be better. And people bristle at me saying that, but I say the same thing, and people bristle about it. I'm going to bring it up. College football is more fun when Notre Dame is good because people can talk crap about them, and it creates controversy. They're a national brand. Ratings are up. It's better. It's one of those things. Same thing with Alabama. College football is worse when Alabama's down. You need regional powers. And the Bears should be a Midwestern regional power that's good.
Instead, it's the Packers. Shoot us.
But it's more fun when they're both good. Think about how awesome it would be if the Bears and Packers were both awesome at football.
I mean, really, you go back. I mean, outside of that 2010 season, when really it was the Bears who paved the way for the Packers to win that Super Bowl. There hasn't been a time where they really crossed paths as competitive teams. 96. I mean, that's 95.
And the Bears didn't even make the playoffs that year.
Well, no. They when they made it and they beat the Vikings.
That was 94.
It was 94. Oh, Jesus.
Yeah.
God. Well, I mean, like, yeah, I don't know. Like, it just there's really never been that time where it really matches up, which is a weird thing to say. But
in the last 10 years, the Bears have only had 2 seasons with double-digit, 2 winning seasons, 2012 and 2018. So unless the Packers were stupid competitive in either one of those years, and I can't remember if
2012 is when Lovey got fired.
Yeah, and
he went 10-6.
How good were the Packers the year we beat them to win the division? The Packers were 6-9 the year we beat them to win the division in Nagy's first year. So there hasn't been that rivalry. Like, we haven't been good when the Packers have been good.
Man, I just like it's just hard to swallow a pill like this again, like that nothing changes, and it's gotten to a point. I mean, it's 2021, and I mean 2020 in general just sucked. Let alone just the Bears, but the whole year just sucked, and it's getting to this realization for really a lot of people where it's like, how much longer can we put up with this? Like, it's literally squeezing every ounce of life out of this fan base and thinking that they're going to come back. It wouldn't shock me if part of the reason that they didn't make a major change to the front office and to the coaching staff is because they know fans are going to show up at Soldier Field next season because they weren't allowed in last year. That they're going to miss it. And I don't think that's going to be the case. I think you're going to see something similar to what you saw in the last year of Trestman, where people were walking out, that it was ugly, that it started the Virginia's pissed. Like, everybody remembers that press conference. Mm-hmm. Everybody remembers what George said. Everyone's like, ooh, where did it get you? It got you the same damn thing. You're in the same damn spot that you were back at the end of 2014.
the Bears have four total playoff wins in the last 30 years. They won a playoff game against the Saints in 1990. After the 1994 season, they upset the Vikings on the road. They missed the playoffs in 95, going 9-7. That was the year you were thinking about where Kramer went ballistic. But they won a game in 90, 94. Then they won 2 to get to the Super Bowl in 06. And that's it. That's it.
Yeah.
Oh, and then they won 1 in 2010. So there you go. That's it. In the last 30 years of football of this franchise. And Ted Phillips has been around for all of them. And nothing needs to change. The culture's good.
And he's still on a stage talking football when he has nothing to do with football.
Exactly. Oh, yeah. He's there for a football press conference. He just wandered in. He got the Zoom password somehow.
Don't mind me, guys. Just gonna sit down, answer some questions, take care of some football stuff. I'm an accountant.
He's just sitting there playing electric football in the background.
He drops down one of the full machines, not the mini one, the full one.
I've been playing a lot of Madden this year, so let me tell you something. I have this Madden Ultimate Team card that I think is going to be really helpful to us.
Oh man, I mean, at some point things are going to break. I don't know if it's when Virginia finally passes away. I don't know if there's a realization within the McCaskies where they finally look in the mirror and realize they don't have what it takes to run this franchise the way it deserves to be run. I mean, but we can sit here and go back and forth about the what ifs or what's it going to take. While at the same time, and I hate saying it, but it almost feels like a Chicago curse where you have like Jerry Reinsdorf as an example here, where he hangs on to his guys for so long. I mean, Garth Foreman, how long he was with the Bulls before they finally cut bait, and John Paxson getting moved to a different role. Before that, Jerry Krause, and just the disaster that we saw within The Last Dance and everything that led up to that in the 90s. And then on the White Sox, I mean, how long it took them to get to where they are with Rick Hahn in rebuilding that franchise. I mean, it's just one thing after another where it's like, I don't know why there's this stubbornness in the city of Chicago when it's painfully obvious that this is a deep devoted sports city that not too many owners seem to care about and would rather get their advice and their information or again, just kind of tune everybody else out as being wrong or not being the best decision makers for the franchise.
For a franchise that used to be one of the most innovative and a true leader in the NFL, it's really sad to see what the Bears have become over the last 30 seasons. It just really is. I mean, and almost the Bears drafted really well in the 80s, but they kind of fell butt first into that. I mean, they hired a GM, I think, for one of the first times in their history. They hit on a few great drafts, hired a great coach, and had a great run. But then you look at all the dysfunction in the 90s around Wannstedt, and then they didn't have a GM. They had a VP of player personnel, and there was all this weird stuff in the front office then. It's been very dysfunctional. The Bears, I think part of the reason ultimately that we've only won 5 playoff games since 1990 is that the NFL has passed us by and has continued to pass us by for the last 3 decades, and we're so far behind it. Like we shouldn't be having to ask why we don't have a director of football operations or some sort of vice president of football operations like the Steelers have. That should be baked in. Like we should be looking around the NFL, I don't know, calling other owners, seeing what they do. Oh, wait, we do that. And we just don't listen. And it's really frustrating to see. Sometimes the answers are simple. And I'm not saying the solutions will be simple as far as like rebuilding that structure, but look at best practices around what the best franchises are doing and copy that.
Right.
you deserve, like, your fans deserve that. Your organization deserves that. You shouldn't be a laughing stock for that press conference that went on the other day. You just shouldn't.
Right. It's going to be interesting the next time we hear from the Bears. I don't know when it's going to be. I'm assuming it'll be talking about the new defensive coordinator. It might not be. For all we know, it's going to be an internal hire. There's not going to be much fanfare. It could be very quiet, which is what, in all honesty, they should have done yesterday about that press conference, and just saying in a very simple letter, Matt Nagy and Ryan Pace are being retained for the 2021 season. All you got to do.
If Matt, given Ryan Pace's propensity to not ever talk, we might have heard the last from him as GM of the Chicago Bears.
Well, and I mean, that's the thing is, I don't know, and obviously this is an unknown at this point, but given the fact that George went on the PR repair tour today, does he realize what happened? Does he realize that everything that was just done was a mistake? That he's doing the things that the fan base doesn't want to hear. But again, I don't think that's necessary. But on the flip side of that, I don't think that, because it's $20 million that he will have to pay out. Or at least that's what's reported.
And I don't know what to believe, because he said COVID and the financial situation had zero to do with their decision. So taking that at face value, if that's true, you committed just malpractice, like as an NFL owner, by keeping these two guys around. If money had nothing to do with it. Now, I wouldn't have agreed with it. I should have said you should have eaten the money, but I could at least see the arguments like, hey, can't really do it. But you also can't say like, hey, these guys were gone if it weren't for me needing to pay them millions and millions of dollars. You also can't come out and publicly say that. I don't think George understood what happened yesterday, and him doubling down on a lot of the stuff today is, there's no reason to go. There's no reason for him to go on those calls today and double down if it's some sort of PR repair tour, because you didn't repair anything. You just doubled down on everything everyone hated already. So I just think he's that dense. I just don't think he gets it. I really don't.
I just want to know who he's getting his information from around the league. Like, that's the thing that's going to stick with me. Well, that's just going to stick with me more than anything else from yesterday, is the fact that he was willing to mention his other NFL owners, his fellow NFL owners, before the people that he's hired to run his own franchise, in who he confides in and who he talks to about figuring out what to do next. Like that was terrifying.
Oh,
that was terrifying.
I had to, but I think I messaged you guys. I sent an text to you and Zach saying, I'm pretty sure I just heard this, but Zach confirmed to me what I just heard, and then it broke on Twitter, other people, and I sent it to you, and I won't say what you said back to me because I don't want to get this video demonetized at some point, but it was almost unbelievable. I heard it, but my brain was like, no, there's no way you heard that. Like, that's just you like zoning out while you're listening to this. But it's scary. But it's also, you're also then not listening, because if you're talking to the Rooneys who are running a really good organization, your organization should look better.
Well, and like it's not just that, but I almost want to, and I know this is a very poor comparison, so I don't even know if I should necessarily say it, but you even kind of look at what just happened with the Cubs on the other side of town, and Theo stepping down and saying there's going to be some difficult decisions that need to be made for this team, and they need to be made by somebody who's going to be here. Instead, we're getting a clown show that's not probably going to be here in a year, making decisions that are more than likely going to have an impact, a serious impact, in future years.
And people can disagree with what the Cubs are doing. I don't necessarily agree with it at all either, but at least Theo made the right choice insofar as, hey, this should be if Jed's going to be the guy next year, let Jed tear this down and build it in his image. And people can disagree with the way Jed's doing it, but I think to your point, over the broader scope of things, that's what needs to be done. Is you can disagree with the moves that are being made, that's fine, but they need to be made by somebody who's going to be here for 5-10 years. And I just don't think Ryan Pace is. He's had 6 years, and is the team better than when he walked in the door? Yes.
Yeah,
Probably, because it was such a cluster under Trestman and Emery at that point. Yes, but that's such a low bar to clear. Does it really matter? Do you feel the Bears are in a better spot now to win a Super Bowl than they were when Ryan Pace walked in the door? I can't say do. Like, I think there's more talent on the roster, but I don't trust the decision making, and I don't think our coach is any good.
yeah. I mean, like you said, it was a very low bar.
Yeah.
That's just the thing. And like let's say they do take a crazy trade, and the Watson thing happens, and we're all blown away, and it's holy crap. And then things don't go the way everybody anticipated. Let's say Watson gets injured, misses the year. And I mean, that would be so Bears. That would be so Bears. And Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy get fired because they put all their eggs into the basket. And then you have to sit here and try and hire a new GM and say, oh, by the way, you don't have first round picks the next 2 years. Good luck.
Have some of that.
Like, that's not going to be a destination that people want to come to be an NFL GM, regardless of the fact that there's only 32 of these jobs in existence. Like, it's just not something that is going to be appealing to anybody. Like, why? I wouldn't want it. I'd wait for something. If I was a prime candidate, I'd definitely wait for something to come around where I know I'm going to be able to shape this how I want and not be worrying about some scrub in the second round that doesn't have, Pro Bowl caliber written all over him, instead of what could potentially be a top 10 pick if things do go that far off the rails. Like, I don't know.
There was a comment, and I almost don't believe it's true, but I'm gonna say it's right. Joseph said that it's we're now the second oldest team in the league. I can't confirm that's true. If that is true, that's horrifying, because you think about, and we're probably living in the past a little bit, you think about what we like about this football team is you feel like there is some young talent. I mean, I don't feel like Fuller's incredibly old. Eddie Jackson's, still young. Jalen Johnson's promising on the outside. Roquan's good. I mean, Hicks is up there. I mean, Hicks has a lot of miles on him. Quinn and Mack aren't, over the hill by any stretch. But you look on the offensive side, A-Rob isn't old, but he's got a knee injury on him. Montgomery, Mitch is gone. So it doesn't feel like they're the second oldest team in the league, but if they are, that's also a really bad situation for an NFL GM, to walk into if Pace isn't here next year, because that, I can't see us being any younger next year by any appreciable measure.
Yeah, I'm trying to find something here that confirms that. And again, even if
it's the difference between, say, second and fifth oldest team in the league, that's still much older than I would have assumed off the top. I guess. I mean, I'm not gonna quibble over. We're only the fourth oldest team. I mean, that's still not good. And actually, I would have put us middle of the road.
Actually, it is true. 26.7 is the second oldest.
Yay!
So yes, no, he's correct in that they are the second oldest, only behind the Falcons, who, I mean, Julio Jones and Matt Ryan get you there pretty quickly. But yeah, it's rough. It's not something that
John Epic is now just coming to the realization I did, where we were the second oldest going this year. I'm actually watching him go through the stages of grief in the comment section, realizing it. Oh my God.
Oh God, it just, I don't know. That's painful. That's a painful realization. And
I would not have put it there, Steven. I don't know what your
well,
assumption would have been. I mean,
Well, think about this. You have Danny Trevathan, who's on the wrong end of 30. Akeem Hicks on the wrong end of 30.
mhm.
You sign Quinn, who's on the wrong end of 30. You have Khalil Mack, who's getting up there in age as well. So there's a few of your main defensive
You're starting to
players.
push 29-ish.
Right, and then you sign a bunch of these vet guys. Brent Urban, I believe, is
Yeah.
creeping around there as well. And offensively,
Some of the
Massey.
linemen, Massey, Leno, got to be 28-ish.
Yeah, I mean, Ted Ginn was floating around there for a while. I don't know if that probably leaned into some of it
Mhm.
at the beginning of the season in terms of age, but there's yeah, there's a few guys there that are up there in age. I mean,
Screen is 29, and we all love Buster Screen.
yeah, Jimmy Graham, another
Oh,
one.
yeah.
I mean, they're all there, piling up. Somebody's asking what Green Bay's average is at. They're, I believe, one of the youngest. Yeah, fifth youngest in the league. Believe it or not. So, again, when you have a quarterback that's taking up 40% of your cap, you gotta go
You can't
youth.
age out the roster too badly.
Right. I mean, it's one of those things. I mean, it's really at the same time though. I mean, it's grasping at straws to an extent because, and we're seeing a lot of the comments here is, the age gap is like 2 years in
Mhm.
the average throughout the league, but
I
I
think
don't
the
know.
overall point to it is, and regardless of where the Bears fall, is the guys who should be peaking right now in that 25 to 27, 28 range that should be hitting their primes have been for the most part complete whiffs. Even
Mhm.
Roquan's had his moments. And we love Roquan Smith. He had a really great year, but he floated last year a little bit.
There
He
there
was
were
a bit
some
of
struggles there, yeah.
yeah. So I mean, you're the guys you're depending on to carry your franchise aren't doing it, and you need to hit on those guys that are in that 24 to 27 age range, and that comes back to drafting, and that's where Ryan Pace shows. And yeah, the Bears might be the second oldest team in the league, and the gap isn't that wide, but it's going to look a heck of a lot better if Mitch hits. If your offensive lineman picks have hit and progressed the way you wanted to in Whitehair and Daniels, and all of a sudden you're not so much worried about being the second oldest team in the league. You can look at your core players and say, they're only 24, 25, 26, 27 years old. It's just, it kind of all circles back to pace, the inability to draft, and player evaluation.
Right, and again, the flip side of this as well is really Ryan Pace dumping significant dollars into these older players,
Yep.
that
To
are
fill the
really
hole that he's created with bad drafting.
right, right. I mean, that's the other thing here is, there's talk about the injury. I mean, Joseph's bringing it up here in the comments.
Yep.
Like they start to leave, they get injured. Whatever it may be. I mean,
Akeem
the
Hicks
cap
is a
hit for
perfect
Jimmy
example.
Graham in
Yep.
2021 is $10 million. Like, you're not going to pay Jimmy Graham $10 million. I mean, you couldn't even utilize him properly in the 1 year that he was here.
Yeah,
You
if we
got
want to not
Robert.
throw to the if we want to not throw to the tight end in the red zone, we'll just put Komet out there.
Well, I mean, you spend significant draft capital on to get your tight end, and for all youth related purposes. I mean, Komet came on at the end of the year. He showed a lot of promise. I'm excited about Cole Komet heading into 2021 along with Darnell Mooney. There's some interesting offensive weapons there. Do they need more? Absolutely. I mean, but again, the other situations here, I mean, like Robert Quinn, the amount of money you dumped into him when he's on the back end of his career. Danny Trevathan, another guy you re-signed when you probably should have signed Kwiatkowski instead of Trevathan.
And the Quinn money exists because you missed on Floyd.
Right.
It all falls, and that's why drafting is so important. And Pace has been terrible at the top end. Like, all GMs are going to hit on picks later in the draft. That happens. You need to hit on those premium picks because then you don't have to spend stupidly later. And we've had to spend, even if it's not stupid money, we've just had to spend more than we should have because we've missed on those picks.
Yeah. It's aggravating. It's absolutely aggravating, and yet year after year we watch Ryan Pace tighten that draft capital
Mhm.
in drafting up, to get his guys. I mean, he did it twice last year. And this year, he's got a first, a second, a third, a fifth, I believe 3/6. Or it might
Yay.
be 2/6 and a seventh. I mean, it's late picks again. I mean, what is he going to do? I mean, is he going to, mortgage a future fourth to move up into the third again? Is he going to do it with the first? If he's sitting there getting antsy about, let's say, a wide receiver, if Jamar Chase falls for whatever dumb reason, or he gets enamored with, Devontae Smith, or just anybody. I mean, there's some big wide receiver names in this class that the Bears could look at. Same thing with quarterback. Like, there's a lot of fear in my mind about where they could potentially go. And again, it just
Mo brings up a good point in the comments too. Did we really miss on Floyd, or was it a result of bad coaching, a la Shaheen, where both of those guys have now gone to other teams and been good? Mo, that's a great question that should have been asked yesterday to a president of football operations. Hey, we've had these two guys that we've drafted that haven't developed here. We let them go, and they immediately show improvement in some degree in other organizations.
With a guy that was in your organization.
Exactly. So what are we doing to change that? What did we not do correctly here? Again, you don't need to give me the entire recipe, but what are some things you're looking at doing to prevent that from happening again? Because then, to our point, the miss on Floyd, you have to sign Quinn to big money. The miss on Shaheen, now you're doubling down on tight end a few years later with Kmet. You're having to sign Jimmy Graham to big money. I mean, this stuff waterfalls on itself, and these are questions that can be asked to a football ops guy that can be a little bit backed off from pace. It doesn't feel as personal. It's like, hey, great question. Here's some things we're looking to do in the scouting department. We're always looking to improve our pro personnel scouting and player development. We feel we have some of those issues figured out. Absolutely, it's something that we saw and raised a concern for us, and we're addressing it. And it's that easy to answer to a football ops guy.
Right. I've seen other things. Did miss on Floyd. Laramie Tunsil was available. I think everybody needs to remember in that draft the Laramie Tunsil video that just magically appeared just as the draft was starting, with him wearing a gas mask and smoking marijuana.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that caused his downfall there, and I think the Bears would have been dragged through the dirt if they drafted Laramie Tunsil that early. I believe he went in the 20s to the Dolphins. It was pretty late.
Yeah, and I see what Joseph's saying is Floyd is playing next to Donald, and Donald frees him up. Mac played opposite of Floyd. Floyd also had Akeem Hicks on the inside and Eddie Goldman on the inside. Roy Robertson Harris got off on the inside a lot too. Like,
I mean, there's no Aaron Donald, but
yeah, I mean, he was playing with some pretty good defensive players along that line that should help free him up. And if you watch Leonard Floyd now, even though Aaron Donald's in the middle of that line, like, it's a different Leonard. Like, we saw it this year in person. And it's just, I get it. I'm sure that plays part of it, but it's not all of it, because he had some good guys with him. Because the entire logic behind Mac was, all right, we're Mac with Floyd. Mac's going to help free Floyd up on the opposite side. We have Akeem Hicks, who's an all-pro on the interior. This should help Floyd, and it didn't.
Personally, because we haven't really had this happen yet, is we don't know about the bigger players and whether they will flourish in areas where they're not under Matt Nagy, what I like to call an effect built by a former Bears coach that was just fired from the Jets. I don't even want to name him because God, he just, like, the fact that he continues to get jobs, and it's like, what the hell needs to happen? But Adam Gase, and every player after he left Miami, like, you have Ryan Tannehill, and I mean, even the guys that stayed in Miami, they flourish, and it's like, okay, are we going to see the same thing? Like, watch Mitch go somewhere and win a Super Bowl, and just, I mean, I like that. That is like my biggest fear out of all this, is that they just broke Mitch. Somebody fixes him, and he turns into this superstar. I know it's not going to happen.
No,
Let's be real. But
someone asked a question about him in the comments. I think Twin 129 asked, why can't Mitch read the field? I've used this example a lot in the past, and Trent Dilfer said it once in relation to Jay Cutler years ago on a Monday Night Football broadcast, and I love the example, so I'll use it here again. There's guys, and I'm not saying Mitch is dumb. There's guys that are great on the whiteboard and can process the game and are whip smart. Jay Cutler's an insanely intelligent individual, but when they get out on the football field, they don't process at that speed required. They don't see things on the football field the same way that they do on a whiteboard, and they can't process at full game speed. And I really feel like that's the issue with a guy like Mitch, and that separates the good ones from the great ones in the NFL at every level. That's what held Cutler back in a lot of people's estimation. And Trent Dilfer said it in a way that it was a self-evaluation of him. He said, I could ace the whiteboard stuff Monday through Saturday, but on Sunday when I walked between the lines, I just didn't process it at the same speed or speed good enough to put that knowledge from the whiteboard to translate it to the football field. And that's what I feel like is with Mitch, is he doesn't know a lot of times what he's seeing. As you see it, it happened in the Saints game. He double clutched a pass over the middle and almost got it picked off. He doesn't trust what he sees because I don't think he really sees it.
Yeah, I'd say that's a fair assessment. And again, everything with me and Mitch goes back to the fact he didn't know what was it, a hard count in the Gruden quarterback camp leading up to the draft. Like, everything just goes back to that moment for me, where you watch it on TV and you're like, how is this dude a potential first round pick when he doesn't even know like the simplistics of the play call? And then when the Bears drafted him, it's like, okay, what just happened? And why did this happen? And then trying to talk yourself into convincing yourself that this was the smart idea, and just having this roller coaster of a road over the last 4 years. It's weird. It's just weird. I don't recall having like we'll call it a generation, because really, I mean, within each of the segments that is the Bears history, I mean, it's the Mitch era being so bizarre compared to what we've seen as Bears fans for years.
There's a few when you read scouting reports on players, and we're going to do a bunch of. I should mention this now to everyone that's bearing with us through all of this, is we're going to do a bunch of draft stuff and a bunch of offseason stuff. We'll probably do some crossover stuff with the Keeping It 100 guys. We've been talking to them. But circling back a little bit, when you read scouting reports on players, there's certain things at certain positions that always raise a red flag for me. Is that safety? If you see a negative and it says a guy's not very instinctive, that immediately is a gigantic red flag for me at the safety position. That's a guy I'm probably not even going near, because instincts are so important. For quarterbacks, when you're reading quarterback scouting reports, if time after time after time after time you see questions about the way he processes the game or processes coverage, especially in college, if you see that in a scouting report on a college QB, that's a gigantic, especially over and over, that's a huge red flag coming into the NFL. And that was the knock on Mitch, is really simple offense. Does he process it really well at the college level? He made a lot of predetermined throws, a lot of really easy stuff. We can't trust the way he processes the game at the college level. Spin that forward, he's having the same problems in the NFL and has been. A lot of times, if you're already behind in college, I don't know how you're going to catch up by playing faster and better people with more elaborate schemes and coverages. I don't see it happening. And that's something to keep an eye on as we move through the offseason and we start looking at quarterbacks and stuff like that. Is if you see processing, run away. Just run away from it.
Yeah, it's man, and this is a unique quarterback class past Trevor Lawrence.
It's an odd class.
It is, and again,
it's an eye of the beholder class. You could talk yourself into Sam Ellen. If you can talk yourself into a Sam Ellen, it's just one of those weird classes where people are going to talk themselves into Trey Lance. And I like some of the guys, but It's
I can't take Trey Lance. Again, you saw one game this year because D2 or 1AA, whatever the hell the subclass is called now.
FBS now.
Yeah. Uh, he just didn't look like he had it. Like there was nothing there that screamed to me, wow, this guy's gonna be a good NFL quarterback. Like nothing. I mean, he just kind of flopped there in that game. And again, this is coming from somebody that also needs to watch a lot more tape. And like you said, we'll be talking a lot more draft here over the coming months as we get closer to the combine, and then obviously whatever the Bears end up doing, whether they'll hold on to their picks or whatnot. It's again, the Bears, if they don't go quarterback, tackle, or wide receiver in the first round, I give up. Because like what more do you need to have hit you over the head like a lead pipe than realizing that those are your three positions of need if Allen Robinson does not come back, specifically on wide receiver, but that like Leno, Massey, Nick Foles, Mitch ain't getting re-signed, despite the fact that he's probably the better option out of those two choices. He went scorched earth in that press conference after the loss to the Saints last Sunday and talking about the culture, and then watching the Four Stooges basically throw them under the bus and talk about how they have the guys in place and the culture's good. That was a direct dig at what Mitch had to say on Sunday. He ain't coming back.
No, that decision was made on Mitch back in whenever they declined his option, because you're not gonna roll the dice on him and hope he has a big year and pay him a ton of money given your situation. That decision has been made, and that decision has continued to be made, especially when he got benched halfway through the year, which is somehow forgotten at times. And then it was the national media building this narrative that anyone who actually watched the Bears didn't quite understand, is when you had Schefter, and then I think right before, was it the Packers game or even the playoff game, where it was, Mitch has played himself into maybe another year here in Chicago. I think it was the CBS game. I think it was the Saints. And you're just kind of looking around, and you're like, he's not even throwing for like 230 yards a game. And you've seen the teams he's playing, and David Montgomery's been the reason we're winning. And then, like I said, when we kick this thing off, is with 2 minutes to go in that playoff game, Mitch was 11 of like 21 or 11 of 22 for 150 yards. Like, oh yeah, definitely bring that back. Like, he's definitely played himself into another year. It's just this narrative that got built up that he was coming back wasn't out of Chicago. It was out of this weird. I feel like it was the other owners trying to get George McCaskey to call them to ask them what he should do, and they're just like, yeah, bring back Mitch.
Oh man, I really like, of all the things, like I don't know where they're gonna go with it. Would it shock me if they try Foles again starting week 1? No, wouldn't shock me. But again, there are so many moving pieces, and the fact that the cap is still hanging over their heads as this unknown to where it could land, and the fact that pick 20, when if you just tanked the rest of the season, you'd have a top 8 pick, if not better. Like, it just aggravating, because we are a hell of a lot closer to pick 8 than we are to pick 20 in the grand scheme of things. And that 2021 schedule, I'll say it right now, 4-12. 4-12.
Yeah, you're more south on the team next year than I was this year.
I don't even care.
By the way, you did win our prop bet this year. Our
did.
Prop bet. So I do owe you brown liquor, which I assume, given the offseason we're about to have, you'll probably be through in about 2 weeks.
I bought I didn't even know they made these. A large bottle of Crown that has a handle in the back of it. I didn't know they made them that big. But they had them on sale, and so I bought one, and it's got about that much left. I mean, that was bought 2 weeks ago. So I mean, it's one of those things. It's like, all right, yeah, some type of. I'll have to bring up the Benny's directory here and see what we can do.
But we'll figure something out. I'll drive it out your way and hand it off to you in a sketchy parking lot in Rockford or something.
God.
I'll meet you in the old clock tower in.
That'd have to be that. Hey, clock tower's raised. Thank you. There's nothing there. They haven't even started the casino in Rockford. I'm spoken like a true Rockford. Rockfordian. I don't even know. I'm not there anymore. That's all that matters. But, yeah, it's man, it's going to be an interesting next couple months because there's a couple different paths this team can go down, and honestly, not a single damn one looks good. So let's hope for a surprise or two just to make things interesting.
We'll definitely be following it along. Like everyone that was in the comments tonight, if you're not already, like, follow us on Twitter, please. Like we'll be following all of this Bears garbage along for the next few months. So commiserate with us on social media. We'll be out there.
Yeah, we'll be out there, as well as Phil and Shane with Keeping It 100. Yep. They'll be out, I believe, just about every week and checking what is going on in Bears land with the great rotation of guests that they bring on for Keeping It 100. So really a lot to look forward to. Draft coverage as well we'll be back with once we get closer to that, and previewing some positions, some possibilities for the Bears as well. So a lot on tap, even though the season has come to an end. We'll see where the offseason takes us, but God help us all. That's all I gotta say. Man, oh man. So yes, Mo. At least we had Cheap Trick in Rockford. Let's bank on a band from 40 years ago. You'd be amazed how much they still revel in the fact that Cheap Trick is a Rockford band up there.
There's always the county fairs and state fairs coming back this year, boys. You can go back and see them.
Got Cheap Trick and the Rockford Ice Hogs. That's all we need in life. But that's going to do it here for the Bearfront Podcast. We thank you all for tuning in to our live season finale here.
Our therapy session.
Before we get to the whatever the hell was happening with the off season. Who knows? It'll be a surprise to all of us. Maybe not. Maybe we'll have more of our fears confirmed, that the Bears just have no idea what the hell they're doing. But hey, like we said, Twitter handles down here below. So give us a follow. We'll follow back as well. And let's talk Bears. Let's just give it no off season. Let's just drink ourselves into darkness talking about whatever the hell the Bears could do. That sounds like fun, right?
I'm in the bar in my house right now, so I'm with you.
Yeah. He's Nick Bitting. I'm Steven Johnson. Thanks for watching, everybody. We will talk to you very, very soon. Again, let's just hope for the best. But enjoy the year, enjoy the winter, and we'll talk to you come draft time. Bear down, everybody.